To Andrew Broussard watercolors. Today we'll just be doing a wet and wet watercolor landscape painting. Just brush is feeling a little stiff. Felt like I almost broke it for a moment. Okay, so I have my medium H brush. I have a quarter sheet of Stonehenge Aqua. I have my palette spritzed with water. I just passed a huge coat of water over the paper so I could paint wet and wet. That also allows the paper to soak and stretch, and this lets me flatten it out so that I don't get that much buckling taking place while I'm painting. This paper is 100% cotton, and I really prefer 100% cotton because it seems to relax a lot better than other papers that I've painted with. So today, like I said, wet and wet. We're going to go for a very diffused tonalist scene. We'll probably keep the painting going as the paper dries, and we're going to increase our pigment concentration as we paint. So wet and wet gives us a diffusion. More pigment concentration obviously is going to increase the amount of paint that we have down, but it also prevents cauliflowering from taking place and whatnot. So let's get to it. We're going to make a decision if we want the high horizon line or a low horizon line. Let's do a low horizon. And we have our raw sienna that we're putting in. Now, different ideas that you can have whenever you're painting. You can think to yourself, do you want it soft and gentle? Do you want brush strokes to take place? Keep those things in mind. With this one, I want to really avoid brush strokes. Let's get alizarin crimson in there. And we're just playing with the sky. Now this is super light, and it's going to get even lighter as it dries. So I want very tonalist, very soft skies taking place. Grab some ultramarine, and I want that very watered down, very thin. I'm kind of just tossing down on the bottom whatever colors I'm tossing up above, just in case I want to go with the whole like a foreground that has water in it, like a pond or a river or a stream, anything like that. Let's mix a little bit of alizarin with ultramarine, a little bit of purple. I'm going to grab a little bit of Payne's Gray. Now I'm live streaming this on Twitch, so every so often I'll stand up and I'll see if anybody's commenting, because I'm using my phone to film this. Or ultramarine. get anything else we want to throw in there. I throw a little bit of Venetian red in the sky. So just a soft effect. Okay, now I'm going to use Venetian red like I said, and I'm going to mix that with ultramarine. If you're following along, which you're more than welcome to, I mix these two together, and you can use light red oxide instead of Venetian red if you don't have that. It's just an earth rust color. Now, mixing the earth rust color with ultramarine will give you a purple that'll recede. This is a combination that I've utilized, that I read about in a book by James Fletcher Watson for Far Distant, and this gives you the atmospheric effect as things turn to the blue side as they get further away from you. So it's just a kind of a formula that I use, but obviously I'm not telling you what percent of which and whatnot. That's for you to experiment with and to learn for yourself, to see what works for you and what you enjoy. You might have a color combination that you learn about from another artist that you wind up finding out that you wind up really liking. So I encourage you to try this combination out, but also to explore for yourself and see what works for you, and that'll help you develop your own style. You can definitely copy this verbatim, like straight up, and you'll learn just as much. Over time, you will develop your own style. So if you're worried about making a carbon copy of what I'm painting right now, and you wind up making a carbon copy, essentially, that's totally fine. There's things that you'll pick up and you'll start learning. You can learn a lot from watching somebody. However, doing and following along, you can learn a lot as well. That's why I place so much emphasis on those videos where we take the pen and ink and do the landscapes of the masters from the 1800s. Even though they're not complete finished copies and they're more just tonal gesture drawings, there's so much that I'm learning every time I do one of those. Same thing with the figure paintings. I've been using the gouache and studying the Boldini figure paintings, the portraits, and every time I do that, I start to learn something new. I recently spent, well, this morning, I spent some money to sign up for a month for a video service that's provided by an oil painter in regards to portrait paintings. And it's David Leffel. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. One of the books in my art collection, I've had that for the longest. It's from him, like a how-to oil painting, Secrets from a Master, I think it's called. And I figured it was worth the money to sign up, try it out for a month, and watch and see what I can learn. So I signed up while I was laying in bed this morning, and I watched 10 minutes of that video, and I was just thinking, oh yeah, this is awesome. Just feeding in a little burnt umber. I don't want to get too reddish, too earth tony yet, so let me mix some ultramarine in. We'll put the tops of some trees. and I want to have a sporadic pattern. I don't want it straight across. I want up and down. I can have gaps in the way, and that'll give me that organic feel of nature. So that's another thing you'll hear a lot about if you read art books. They'll often talk about rhythm and patterns and that feel. If I went boom, 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 it'll look like trees that were planted years ago in perfect line. And you want to avoid that effect, unless it's what you're trying to really show is like for example, if you're painting and talking about man's influence on nature, that's what you would do right there. I put this guy like dead center inadvertently, so I'm trying to get him to be asymmetrical. So part coming out, part coming this way. You don't have to make the reflection perfect. In fact, I would suggest not making it perfect, and that would help you get a rhythm and a variety as well. Now, I want to put a closer landmass in, so I'm going to mix ultramarine with burnt sienna. It's going to get darker. I'll put it right in here. And this will kind of solidify like the land masses. And then we'll play around with trees for compositional shape. And we'll accentuate textures and tonal varieties. So that is where we're going with this. And what I'm going to do is bring the landmass here. And this will prevent the eye from going off the page. In fact, I'm going to go back to that bluish purple that I've talked about. So this is the first clean off of the brush. Oh, somebody's in the live chat. Hey, how's it going? I said hello. Whenever I film these, like I said, live on Twitch, and every so often as I paint, I'll get up and I'll take a look and see if anybody says anything. So I'm mixing a light purple with the Venetian red and the ultramarine, but I don't want too much water concentration in it because I'm going wet and wet, and that's going to give me the cauliflower effect, and I don't want that. But what I want is a little bit of tree mass right here, and I want to still get the idea that it's receding, and I want to put another tree mass layered on top of it. I might be choking too close to the edge right here, but whenever I paint, I try to harp on the fact that we want to paint edge to edge, and even if we have a mat covering those borders, we want to get that whole idea of taking place. At least that's my philosophy. So mix a stronger color, purple. Now I could use that same mixture and start building it up. I could also mix in the sienna to warm it up, and that brings it closer. And that's Harrison crying in the other room, the one-eyed cat. Unfortunately, I can't let them into the art room because they would climb on the wet oil paintings. So we have our shape taking place, our composition. Here, I'm thinking about how I want to block the eye from going off the page here. I might want to just have a dark tree mass. And it could be low-lying, but it's going to have to cast a dark shadow, and that'll block the eye from going off the page right there. It's just, for me, what I've been using a lot is those two type of techniques, a tree coming up or a mass with a shadow. Other things I could have done is pass a tree up right here, and that would have the eye from going off the page. Branches that go off in that direction. There's different things that you can use to stop the eye. In fact, as we build this up, we might do something like that. So now I'm increasing my pigment load, and I'm looking for where I want my darks. And we have this guy right in the middle. It's still wet paper, so it'll diffuse, making them a little bit bigger. Things have a tendency to get larger and larger as you paint, so you want to keep that in mind. I'm making him bigger because he's, like I said, it was dead center at first, and I was pushing it off to the side to make it asymmetrical. But I also want to expand him a little bit wider, so that when I darken up the center, I have this diffused softness on the edges to give me that 3D effect and give me the idea that light is shining through the edge of those trees. So far, just using the Hake brush exclusively on this. If I use the rigger at all, I can start putting branches and stuff in, but I don't know if that's going to happen. We'll see. An interesting thing that is popping up in my mind, and these are things you want to look for, you want to think about, and like I said, for this one, we're just going wet and wet. We're just progressing as it's drying, and we're adding pigment. That's kind of the experiment here. But composition-wise, we have this dark mass, and it casts a dark shadow. How does this dark shadow, dead center, stop the eye from moving left to right? How does that affect the viewer's readership? I'm not sure what the answer is. It's just something that's coming to mind as I'm doing this and seeing that, just thinking, oh wow, what do I do? And how does that affect? Foreground painting, and I've talked about this a lot in these videos, is that whenever we do the pen and ink sketches of the master painters, like I said, I'm not sure if it's just my selection of who I'm looking at, but the foregrounds have very dark elements, very tonally the same. There's a lot of texture in the foreground. However, I think because of that close tonality, it prevents the eye from lingering there. So that's a very, very interesting thing that I've been just noticing a lot of. And if you are out there and you guys have any knowledge about that, I would love to hear from you and see what your take is on it. And I'm referring to the landscape painters, 1800s onward. I haven't done too much study of landscape painters prior to the 1800s. I do have some Claude Lorraine books, and I know Claude Lorraine was very influential on a lot of landscape painters within just all time forward after that. And he was what, 1700s, I think? But I have to look to see if he used that element there. What else do I have? I have some books on the watercolorist of of England from different time periods. And I'll have to see. But those were more, I think, topographical type paintings, and I'm not good at pronouncing the word. I think the word's draftsman. Now I'm going to build up that dark mass in the center here. So you see we have that soft diffusion on the edges, and as we get closer to the inside of this tree, we get that darkness. Find that this little purple back there is necessary to help tie everything together. I'm just going very dark with this one, where it's dark against such a light sky. I'm wondering if hindsight, the sky on top should have been a lot bluer and darker to think about sunset and a later evening. This is our sienna burnt in there. Add a little bit of color. Why don't we get some alizarin? What else? Let's grab the rigger brush, switch up the pace a little bit, and mix it dark. We'll throw in branches and trunks and trees and stuff. And I'll use this dark to add that rhythmic variety along this water's edge. So this is kind of the underside of these bushes, trees, branches. And at the distance that it's at, it is relatively close to us visually, we want to do a vertical up and down. I don't want just a perfect straight line with these. Think about the shadow that it'll cast. Maybe bring up dark masses and let those shadows get cast down. And let the viewer read that as different aspects of the edge of water. And this is something I always think about when I'm driving about 3 or 4 blocks away from my house. There's a wooded edge, and every time I look at it, there's some trunks that I see, 2 or 3 trunks, and there's like the dark woods right alongside the trunks. And it's probably something I'll have to do with a larger tree mass, so it's kind of a negative painting aspect that always comes to mind when I see that. So as it dries, you want more and more pigment. I'm sorry, as you're going wet and wet, you want more and more pigment. With this, you probably don't have to worry too much about cauliflowers at this stage. We're getting pretty dry with the paper. We could, in fact, take our card, which ever since I cleaned up this desk, I can't seem to find any of them, even though I know that I have millions of pieces of cards everywhere. We can start scraping out those areas as well. Let's scrape this guy out. That adds interesting effects. So what we'll do is we'll scrape it out. Look at a few different trees scraped. How does that sound? And then I'll show you what we're going to do with that. 1, 2. So I'm doing horizontal pulls with a wide piece of card. And you can see now we're doing everything's drying and lightening up. So I'm trying to keep up with that. Not so much that it causes issues, but from the standpoint of I want everything to kind of flow together nice. And sometimes I just need to add a little bit of water to this. In fact, we could do a foreground scrape if we wanted to, right here. This is very corner of the paper. I don't think it would be covered by the mat, but it would be close, so we're risking it, but let's go for it. Okay, so what I wanted to show you was, and we have it light against dark, and then once it goes to the sky, we switch it and we do dark against light. So that's counter change right there. I think I demonstrated that in a relatively recent video. And I'm leaving those gaps because we're going to put some foliage in there. So the sky portion is pretty dry. We didn't get any diffusion of the trunk lines when we drew those in. I feel like we're not getting a nice, solid, sustainable foliage for these guys yet. That's why I'm playing around quite a bit. Let's add little branches. I'm going to switch to the number 4 rigger. Sorry, the number 1 rigger. This is just a thinner one. And I'll use hopefully the illusion of just branches and ideas like that to get more of a density taking place. To say that, yeah, we got a lot going on the top of these trees. As opposed to, hey, we just got a haircut, we don't have anything to sustain us. This parallel lines of these two is too much, so that's why I'm putting this right here to try to break that up. Watch out for parallel lines. Watch out for the shapes of the branches. So yeah, I put a branch here. I don't want to put one right out on the other side. I want to stagger the growth. And just play around with it. We had this guy come up over here. At this point, I'm just using mixtures of ultramarine and Payne's gray. For me, I'm really not too concerned about color. I always wind up painting very dark and moody. Anyway, and I want to splattering paint right there. Grabbing the number 4, just to mix that with, let's mix it with Venetian red. I haven't done that in a few days, and that was a new mixture I've been playing around with. I'm gonna put that back in here on that back side. Let it come up a little bit on the other side as well. I'm doing squiggles to get variation in the texture, as opposed to just having too much of it, just a blank mass. Let's come back to the foreground. Use this guy to texture him up. It's a little too up and down, so what I'm going to do is break up that kind of flat contour. Burnt umber. Get a little bit more going on the innermost part of this tree. Like I said, I want that softness around the edges, and I want more of a darkness on the inside. Just taking a card just to add a little bit of variety here. Take the edge and lightly scrape if you want to add texture. Usually get the texture of the paper from that. You could even take the number 1 rigger and add calligraphy strokes. And you could do the same thing with the card and scrape up grass masses. Okay. Play around. Different spots. See. A little bit more accents. Since this area is wet right here, I'm going to pull the paper towel straight and try to do a little bit of lifting. Just adding variety. Kind of almost want to grab some sap green just to play around with that. In fact, let's do some of that. Add a little bit of green. Just like I said, we're just trying to break that straight wall that I have right there. Might have to bring... Oh, we got a little bit of green, good. Yeah, let's play with that green up on the top portion. Let's see. Mixing it with the ultramarine blue now. You could use the back of a brush for marks, so just always remember that. Think of different mark making tools that you have. Do a little bit of negative painting back here. Everything, we haven't done any dry off. Any dry off that took place is just natural. We did wet and wet. So we're just letting this all occur naturally, and just almost at this point, any area that's wet is because we just added paint to it. Putting that there to add a sense of depth. We have that in front, we have that tree behind, we have the softness right there compared to the crispness. Let's move back to the foreground. Let's get a dark mix, concentrated mix. Kind of like a dead log type idea, fallen branch, or just a mixture of bramble. That darkness that it would have. Maybe even have a part that pops up. Making everything, try to keep everything tonally close in the foreground. Let's see how we look through the viewfinder. So everything seems, it films darker. If I put my hands, you can see it lighten up a little bit. Let's darken up a few more spots. Then I might wind up just doing a dry off with the blow dryer, just so we can get to the end and see how everything looks. So if you made it this far, I appreciate it. If you have any questions, please comment down below. Of course, I would love for you all to like and subscribe, follow. I do have a link for Patreon down below. That just helps with art supplies and whatnot. And it does have a tier that has exclusive content. But at the end of the day, it's kind of just to help this channel go. And I enjoy just producing content. It's fun. So let's set a little bit right in here. let's dry off. Let's see where we're at. Alright, so we got very dark on this one. Like I said, we just played with moving forward in a wet and wet painting, not adding, not spritzing any water, not just adding water from the brush, and not doing any dry off. I'm just kind of playing around, manipulating. So, I hope you had fun, and I will talk to you all soon. Have a great day. Bye. Let me turn it off. There we go.